Welcome everybody. Well, good morning. My name is Harry Batley. I am the service manager for Emotional First Aid Limited. I'm joined here this morning by Matthew Morris, who is our Director of Development and the designer of Emotional First Aid Training. And we just wanted to have a bit of your time this morning just to talk about emotional first aid. So what it is, who it's for, and how we think it could help you and all the organizations that you're a part of. So this talk this morning is going to be roughly sort of 45 minutes, and then we'll have a short time at the end for people to ask any questions that you might have. As you can see, your mics and cameras are disabled, but the chat function does work. So if you do have any questions or any queries as we're going, then please do feel free to stick that in the chat, and then it means that potentially it won't get lost later. But then also, yeah, if you have any questions, any queries or anything, then yeah, please do take a note of them, and then we'll have time when we get to the end. But I'm gonna just head straight into it. So I'm gonna share my screen with everybody. So emotional first aid, human seeing, human being. Emotional first aid is all about training about what it is to be a human being. So a quick summary before we get started. In emotional first aid, we have created training to support and maintain emotional well-being. So that is the first thing to say, and the most important part of this training is all about trying to support and maintain one's own emotional well-being. That might be in the workplace, but that could also be in life outside of the workplace also. It's evidence-based training. Everything that we have as part of this training has an evidence base and research base behind it. It's skills-based training that can help build emotional intelligence and team resilience. So this is all about trying to make teams to create cultures that are more emotionally intelligent and to help create resilience both on an individual level and a wider team level. It's a concept and a content that is memorable. So it's been designed first and foremost with something that is going to help to stick in people's minds, because if it's not memorable, if it's not sticking with us, then it's not going to be able to help us. It's training that is interactive and enjoyable. So similar to the last point, if it's not interactive, if we're not enjoying it, if we're not able to have fun with it, then it's going to be very difficult for it to stick in people's minds and to be something that they can really engage with. So it has been designed with that in mind, to really be as fun as it can be and interactive as it can be. And finally, it's training that reflects the future direction for emotional well-being. So we can see now, and I will discuss it more as this session goes on, but there are trends moving forward that are taking us to different places when it comes to thinking about our emotional well-being, both on an individual level and a wider societal level. So we're starting to move away from previous ideas that for better or worse haven't really been working for us. So that's a brief summary of emotional first aid, of what we've created, and we're going to be talking about we're going to develop those points as we go through the session. But the next thing is, why emotional first aid? So why have we created it? Why do we feel there is a need for this training in the first place? Well, there's a couple of reasons for that. So the first one is that the Health and Safety Executive lists stress, anxiety, and depression as the main cause of work days lost due to work-related ill health from 2022 to 2023, with 17.1 million total work days lost. So that's roughly 19.5 days for each person off. So this paints a picture of how much stress, anxiety, and depression are causing such distress and harm on an individual level, but also with that amount of sick days, that's causing a massive issue for organizations, both private, public sector, and charities. Furthermore, a 2023 report by AXA UK and the Centre of Economic and Business Research showed that work-related burnout is costing the UK economy roughly £28 billion per year. So that's resulting in 23.3 million sick days. So this is something that's costing the UK economy a lot of money, and money that could be well used for public services and for companies and for charities, and crucially for the individuals themselves. So this is something that is obviously causing a massive issue both on an individual level and a wider society level. A new report by the Resolution Foundation found that young people are now more likely to be out of their work or have time off due to anxiety, stress, and depression than people in their 40s. This is a direct reverse of the same trend at the start of the century. So in 2003, people in their 40s and 50s were most likely to have time off or time off work due to anxiety, stress, or depression, with those people in their late teens and early 20s, the least likely group. And now in 20 years, that has completely changed. That is a massive shift in a very, very short amount of time. And it shows that there are things that really aren't working in our current workplaces when it comes to managing stress, managing anxiety, and managing burnout. And the fact that people who are just entering the workforce are already getting burnt out with it shows a massive issue potentially in the future. And finally, that research has shown that social factors such as loneliness and relationship breakdown have the same impact on health as other well-known health risks such as smoking or alcohol usage. So we know now that these social factors are just as important. So the relationship breakdown, loneliness, and that can be loneliness in terms of kind of feeling, you don't have to be, you can be surrounded by people and still feel very lonely. So those have a massive issue on our biological bodies as well as our emotions. So as well as this, respected and world-leading organizations such as the World Health Organization and the United Nations have directed countries around the world to change course on mental health. So both of these organizations released documents towards the end of the last year, really saying how there needs to be a shift away from mental health and towards processes that are community driven, that are trauma informed, and are person centered, as opposed to really trying to shift the view away from this kind of more biological kind of medical model of mental health to something different. And we're seeing that to start to have an impact already, as towns, cities, and countries in the UK are declaring themselves trauma informed, as they recognise the evidence that links emotional distress to the things that have happened to people rather than what is wrong with them. So towns such as Luton, cities such as Plymouth, whole countries such as Wales and Scotland, all of them have already declared themselves trauma informed, and all of them are starting to direct the services within those towns, cities, and countries to start working from a more trauma informed place and have taken a trauma informed approach to the people they work with and the people they support. And finally, that neuroscience is showing us that what happens in our lives interacts directly with our whole body and impacts all aspects of our health and well-being. So we know now that we can't separate ourselves into, oh, this is what I'm thinking and feeling, and this is what my body is feeling. They are intrinsically linked. To things that you feel from an emotional point of view and the things that we think are going to have a direct impact on our biological health, on our body's health, and vice versa. The things that our bodies feel are the things that our physical feelings that we're taking in each day. That's going to have a direct impact on our emotions, how we feel about ourselves and how we feel about the things around us. So that's a bit about why we're putting this together. This is why we feel there is a need. But the next thing is, why not mental health? Why, as we're talking about emotions, we're talking about feelings, why am I not talking? Why are we not talking about mental health? Well, there's a few reasons for that. So the first thing is that our experience and feedback is that people that find the words mental health could potentially quite frightening and stigmatizing. So our experience as an organization is that often the words mental health, that's more of a barrier to people feeling like they can talk about the things that are happening to them and their emotions, as opposed to something that kind of helps stimulate a conversation. Whereas talking about the things, that asking someone what's happened to them, asking people how they're feeling, that often is the thing that can help start a conversation, as opposed to using the word mental health. And also, many countries and many cultures and countries around the world don't consider emotional struggles to be related to ill health at all. So, whereas here in the Western world, we have this idea of mental health and being mentally ill, whereas if you took that same concept and same approach and same idea to many cultures and the countries around the world, they would struggle to relate to that because they don't see having emotional distress or the things that cause emotional distress as being related to some sort of illness or ill health related. Using the word health suggests that to be struggling emotionally means that you're ill or unwell. So while some people believe this to be true, not everyone does. There are so many ways to address how we feel. So in emotional first aid, we don't use the term mental health, as is one belief amongst many. So that's it in a nutshell, really, is that it's not to say that to see things from a perspective of mental health is wrong or that people shouldn't do it. At the end of the day, it's all about what is useful and helpful for the individual. If the individual feels that viewing the things that are happening to them through the lens of mental health is meaningful and helpful to them, then that is what matters. Whereas it's trying to say that that's just one belief amongst many others about how we view emotional distress. And so, yeah, we believe that people can be helped by having a foundational philosophy that gives them freedom and choice to explore and make sense of their own emotional worlds. So freedom and choice, those are the two key words here, is that if people feel they are able to have that, if we give that to them to find their own way of understanding the things that are happening to them, then that is what's going to help to make the difference for them. So it's all about giving people those two things, freedom and choice. So I'm going to hand you over to Matthew now, who's going to talk a little bit more about the inspiration behind emotional first aid and some of the key concepts in the training. So over to you, Matthew.
Thanks, Harry. Good morning, everyone. Thanks ever so much for joining us. It's lovely to have you here. I was going to say lovely to see you, but I can't see you. But it's lovely to have you here. Emotional first aid was my creation, but really it was a culmination of 40 years or more working in this field. As a mental health nurse, working for the NHS for 20 years, working in the charity sector, now in the private sector. So we were looking at how do we support our staff and our employees with the issues and the things what are happening to them. And we have a particular philosophy of working with people, which is based on seeing the human being first and not going with sort of labels or the names other people have called them. So when we were looking at training and support for staff, there wasn't really anything out there that reflected our philosophy. So we felt, well, maybe we've got something to say about that. Maybe we could create something. So that was part of the inspiration. When I came to look at it, what I was thinking was, as Harry said, it was really important that we created something that was evidence-based, doing something completely new and trying to convey something new to people. I felt it was really important that people were reassured by everything within the content of the training, having an evidence-based, research base to what we do. It had to be person-centered because that reflects who we are and our philosophy. But as Harry said, taking a person-centered approach and a trauma-informed approach is very much the way things are going, and led by organizations such as the World Health Organization and United Nations. Their reflection, so not mine, not ours, but theirs, is that really the last 40, 50 years of the medical paradigm hasn't proved to be helpful internationally. As we saw in the figures Harry quoted, that rates of people being off work due to emotional or mental health is going up and up, and shows no sign of abating. So really there's a need for us, an imperative, to begin to think differently about how we address the things that are happening to people and try to understand and make sense of them. So we believe in the person-centered and trauma-informed approach as being the most beneficial one. I wanted to design something so that other employers had choice. So we felt that we had a lack of choice. So we felt that that was reflected more generally. So we're not saying that the other trainings that are out there are wrong, but they reflect a particular perspective on what's happening to people and how you can help. And we represent a different way of doing that. And it's always important, so we don't feel trapped, we don't feel stuck, that people have choices, and employers need choice in how they support and what's the best way for them to support their staff. Also, I wanted to create something that celebrated human qualities and capabilities. There are 8 billion of us on the planet. Homo sapiens have been around for around 500,000 years. And we've been addressing our emotional needs, our emotional worlds for all of that time. And people are amazing. People have incredible skills already. I found that much of the training I had and I saw that was out there kind of was making an assumption that people were coming along knowing nothing. And in actual fact, if you think about it, nothing can be further from the truth. We are learning how to make sense of the world, our feelings and other people's feelings, and interacting from the moment we are born. So part of the training is helping people to appreciate how amazing they already are and what skills they already possess naturally. The next thing I did is to think about the concept of first aid. So where there's the tradition of first aid is that somebody in the organization is trained to be able to respond to the needs of other people. So the first aider. And at the moment, that's the trend in emotional or mental health, is that you then train somebody up who takes on that responsibility. The more I looked into it and the more I discussed it with other people, that didn't seem to make sense. It isn't the same as cutting your finger in the kitchen or collapsing. The emotional needs within an organization, I didn't believe can be met by training someone for 2 days to take on that huge responsibility. It's a daunting responsibility, and it's unfair to expect anybody to be able to do that. So what I did is flip around that concept of first aid. And so the message is the first aid is you. So we're encouraging employers to train everyone in their organization with the knowledge, skills, and awareness of how to take care of themselves. And if everybody is taking care of themselves, they're more likely to be in a position to pay it forward and to begin to look after one another. People in organizations, you already have people in organizations who are responsible for the emotional and mental health of their staff. And they are their leaders, the managers, the directors. So they already have that responsibility. So we believe that those people should receive a little extra emotional first aid training. So that not only do they understand how they can look after themselves, but also they can understand why it's important and some of the foundational knowledge and skills that underpin emotional first aid. But then if everybody can have the emotional first aid training and the organizations show that they're committed for people to look after themselves, then they're more likely, like I said, to be looking after one another. So the concept of emotional first aid is very much take care of yourself. It is not selfish to look after yourself. It is an act of compassion towards others to make sure that you're okay. Because if you think about it, it doesn't make sense. If you're not in a position to care for another person, that isn't going to happen, or it's not going to happen in the right way. So it's really important that everyone's encouraged to understand that they should, and it's important to look after yourself, but also how and how they make sense of their emotional world. I then realized it's important that we have a concept, as Harry said, that's memorable, because there's so many philosophies, concepts that people can feel a little bit overwhelmed with it all. So they can gain a lot of knowledge on the training, but then that's quickly lost if we don't create a concept that is memorable. So the concept in the training starts off with asking people to imagine looking at a map in the dark with a torch. And then people can kind of identify with, if your torch is held close to them, to your map, you're very limited in what you're going to be able to see. And sometimes in our emotional worlds, our torches are pulled very close to our map, and we can feel trapped or feel that there's only one way of seeing where you are and what's happening to you. So what we're doing in the training is designed to help people to begin to move the torch and to begin to lift it. When you begin to lift the torch, more features of your map come into view. And if you're able to raise it further and maybe as high as you can see the entire map. You can see where you came from, you can see where you want to go, and you can see some of the key features that exist on your map. And we ask people in the training to think about themselves and everybody they know having their own individual map. And we call that your life landscape. So everybody has their unique life landscape, and everyone will look differently. For instance, someone's life landscape, they might see their life, their world, as a kind of three-dimensional chess game with making moves and the features and the people represented by the figures on the game or what's happening around it. Not everyone, like the last landscape, would put names to all the places and the features, because maybe you don't need to, because you know what your map or your landscape represents. Someone might see their life landscape as more of galaxies, of planets and black holes and spaceships and satellites. It doesn't matter how you see your life landscape, but it's a way of beginning to think about your world, where you came from, who you are, and where you want to be. But what is true of all life landscapes is that, as well as the features that are on the landscape, there will always be climates. There'll be climates in particular places on your life landscape. And just as climates in our world, that you can have climates which support growth, are warm and supportive and nurturing, you could equally have climates which are adverse, are violent, can spring up out of nowhere, and where all you can do is hunker down in order to survive. That is true of our world and the places that we've been and the places we are and the places we can go. So we ask people then to explore the climates in the places that they exist and how well they support themselves and growth, but also how maybe making sense of what people have had to do to survive, because sometimes in the climates people were in, survival was all that they could do. But viewing it in this way, you encourage more empathy, you encourage more compassion, not just for yourself, but for other people. You link it to your story and your understanding and making sense of not just who you are, but why you are and why you do the things that you do and how, because sometimes it's all you could do to cope. And in that way, you can attribute far more respect and value to those, all of us, all the parts of us. So climates are really important. So again, as we flow through the training, we ask people then to think about, well, they're moving around their life landscape all the time. So what do we need in order to successfully navigate our worlds and get to the places that we want to be? So what have we got in our rucksack, or what we call your bag for life? So here it's really important to impress on people how full their bag already is. So we're not assuming people come to the training with an empty bag for life, but people often don't realize how much they've got in there already that supports them, that helps them to navigate and to move around their world. So in the training, we recognize what those things are and try to identify new ones because we know just by being human, there are already many skills that we have in common by being a human being. So we in the training, we make people aware of those things. We do games and activities that help people to raise their awareness of that. And then we try to add a few more things to their Bag for Life that help people to navigate their world. Central to this, and one of the main resources that we add to the Bag for Life are the 3 C's. So anyone that's done traditional first aid training will know that people talk about ABC, airway, breathing, and circulation. In emotional first aid, we ask people to remember the 3 C's of compassion, creativity, and curiosity. So it's interesting that in many training for leadership, mentoring, that people talk about soft skills. But what neuroscience is telling us now, and research is telling us now, there is nothing soft about compassion, curiosity, and creativity. They are, in fact, human superpowers. So if we can harness compassion, curiosity, and creativity, and this is why we've linked it as giving it a people's compass to navigate their emotional worlds. With compassion, curiosity, and creativity, you are never lost and you are never stuck, because there's always the opportunity to be compassionately curious. Where am I? How did I get here? Oh, I know. What can I do to move? What have I got in my bag? What can I do to move? What can I do to get to the places that I need to go or to get away from this place? Harnessing the 3 C's is such an important thing for people to remember. So hopefully this concept allows people to think about their world, think about their resources, and think about how they move around and have the freedom and choice to move around. All of which comes together to hopefully improve people's own emotional intelligence. And then if everybody in the organization is doing it, then you improve the culture and the emotional intelligence of groups of people, which then naturally follows that you improve the group resilience and the ability of people to perform as a group of people. And as we say here, co-regulating. So what we're going to do now is show you an animation from the Polyvagal Institute. So the Polyvagal Institute is looking at the biology of us as human beings and how that links to the things that happen to us and the impact of that in terms of how we are in the world and how we feel. So we have permission from them to show this animation to you. I hope you enjoy it, and then you'll come back to me when it's finished. So Harry's going to move away from the PowerPoint and link you to that.
Over half of us have a chronic disorder such as high blood pressure or autoimmune disease. Rates of anxiety, depression, PTSD, and addiction are skyrocketing. Why? The roots of these issues and more can often be traced to trauma, adverse childhood experiences, chronic stress, and ultimately, nervous system dysregulation. Meet your autonomic nervous system. Let's call it ANS. ANS takes care of a lot of your automatic functions, like your heartbeat, digestion, and body temperature. ANS also manages your survival and stress response, working to keep you alive when your life is in danger. ANS functions as our built-in detection system, constantly scanning our environment for cues of safety and cues of danger. As ANS scans the environment, it has 3 general responses or states. Safe. You feel calm, relaxed, and connected to those around you. Mobilized. When ANS detects danger, it sends a command and your heart rate and breathing increase. Adrenaline and cortisol are released, and blood rushes to your muscles so you can handle the threat. This is our fight-flight response. Immobilized. When ANS detects that the danger is so great that you can't fight or run, it shuts you down. In this state, our heart rate, blood pressure, and body temperature decrease, and pain-numbing endorphins are released. ANS does all of this automatically without us thinking about it. ANS doesn't just use these states for survival, it uses them to navigate through the world each day. When ANS functions well, it moves fluidly from one state to another, 1 minute mobilized and ready for action, and the next resting and recovering. ANS will often blend states together. When we play, ANS combines the mobilized and safe states, and when we are intimate with loved ones, it combines immobilized and safe states. When ANS can stay flexible and fluid like this, it helps us manage and become resilient to stress and negative events. We're able to bounce back and move on. Unfortunately, when we experience trauma and chronic stress, it can keep ANS from functioning in a healthy, regulated, and resilient way, and can keep us stuck in states of survival. A friendly get-together can become frightening. A simple meeting at work can become threatening. For those with a history of trauma and chronic stress, the ANS detection system often becomes faulty, constantly signaling danger even when we are safe. It's like ANS is an alarm system, constantly signaling fire even when there's no smoke and no flames. Consistently living in these survival states can be debilitating, and we often develop adaptive strategies like using drugs, alcohol, food, work, or sex in an attempt to bring regulation and temporary relief. Understanding how trauma impacts us is critically important. There is a whole spectrum of experiences that can be traumatizing and adversely impact ANS, like accidents, assaults, and natural disasters, which are often called shock traumas. There is also developmental or relational trauma, when we experience chronic adversity, abuse, neglect, and lack of safety while growing up. Many other experiences can be traumatizing, including chronic stress, medical procedures, and adverse community environments like poverty, discrimination, and violence. Additionally, new research in epigenetics shows us that trauma can get passed down genetically at least 3 generations. In the past, we've thought about trauma as events that happen to us. We now know that trauma is an experience, not an event. It's what happens inside of us as a result of what happens to us. It's our response to the event rather than the event itself. Over 20 years ago, Kaiser and the CDC launched a groundbreaking study of over 17,000 patients that showed a direct link between adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, and long-term health and wellness. In the study, 2/3 of participants reported at least one ACE. Over 20% reported 3 or more. When participants reported 4 or more ACEs, this corresponded to an increased chance for heart disease, cancer, drug abuse, and more. With 6 or more ACEs, life expectancy decreases by almost 20 years. We are learning that many physical and emotional symptoms may emerge from a chronically dysregulated ANS. When ANS gets stuck in survival states, our biology shifts its focus from the tasks that keep us healthy, happy, and thriving to surviving the immediate perceived threat. Many conditions and symptoms that are chronic and difficult to diagnose and treat can be attributed to a dysfunctional ANS. Our childhood experiences can also keep us from connecting with others. This is vitally important because as children, our #1 survival priority is to attach to caregivers. When the people responsible for our safety aren't safe, and we are living in chronic states of unsafety, ANS doesn't get wired right. The part of ANS that judges what is safe and what is not becomes faulty. If intimacy and connection were unsafe as a child, as adults, we'll often unconsciously reject attempts from friends and partners to connect. Even though intimacy and connection is what we want, ANS feels it's unsafe and won't allow it. Trauma compromises our ability to engage with others, replacing the need for connection with the need for protection. When there has been trauma, ANDs can no longer differentiate between our unsafe past and our now safe present. ANDs can't turn off the need to protect, even though we are now safe. So what can we do when ANDs becomes dysregulated? How do we recover from trauma and develop a healthy, regulated, resilient nervous system? Fortunately, we can retrain ANDs to feel safe again. This is best done with the help of others. Each one of us has an ANDS, and our ANDS is constantly communicating with and attuning to the states of others. We autonomically mirror the states of those around us. This is called co-regulating. We see it in herd behavior. If one animal senses danger, the entire group becomes more alert, increasing their chances of survival. We're exactly the same. When we're with others who are stressed, angry, or depressed, it makes us feel worse. When we're with others who are calm and happy, it makes us feel better. Connecting with others who are safe, attuned, and present is the best way to restore a healthy ANDS. For those struggling to recover from the impacts of trauma, there is an emerging field of innovative clinical therapies that have been developed to reestablish safety and regulation to ANDS. We're also learning that many of the activities we intuitively know make us feel better, like spending time in nature, practicing yoga, dancing, helping others, and more, can help ANDS become more regulated and resilient. Healing from trauma and finding release from being stuck living in survival states comes as ANDS becomes regulated, increases its capacity for resilience, and regains its flexibility. It's not about being calm all the time or mobilized all the time. It's about having a flexible and resilient nervous system that can accurately assess safety and danger and responds appropriately. We're truly resilient when we can fluidly move from one state to another. For those living with the impacts of trauma and chronic stress, becoming unstuck is like beginning a new life. For the rest of us, understanding how our nervous system states guide our behavior can help us become happier, healthier, and more empathetic human beings. Collectively, we have an epidemic of social issues that are rooted in trauma. If we can do the work to heal past traumas and build healthy, regulated nervous systems as individuals, families, and communities, we can end the cycles that continue to reinforce our greatest challenges and create a safer, vibrant, and more connected world.
Excellent. Thanks, Harry. Can you get us back to the PowerPoint,
Yes.
please? I hope you enjoyed that animation. We think it supports very well what we're trying to do with emotional first aid. I don't know if you remember the first slide. The first slide we show is says human seeing, human being, because really what we want in the training is to reflect on what it means to be human, the attributes we have, the capacity that we have, also biologically, and how that relates to the latest evidence, like what you've just watched with the autonomic nervous system, and how that links to co-regulation and creating more emotionally intelligent cultures and environments where you have that co-regulation, because people have a better understanding of who they are, what's happened to them, and what helps them. And also, as you can see from the animation, the impact of trauma through what they were talking about in the ACEs, and the things Harry was talking about the impact of things like loneliness in the world today. But again, that's part of understanding the scope of what it is to be a human being, but then also reflects the choices that people make, because different things help different people. Everybody's life landscape's different, everybody's story is different, and what makes sense to one person might make sense to another. So it is about supporting and freeing us all up to find our own way, and supporting each other to find our own way in our world and the world we share. So I'll go back to the evidence base, because again, being new, it's very important that we let people know where we get our information and what is the evidence base. We say it's all evidence based. Well, what is that evidence base? So a large underpinning of emotional first aid training is something called the Power Threat Meaning Framework. The Power Threat Meaning Framework was commissioned by the British Psychological Society and was published in 2018. It was written by two lead authors, Professor Mary Boyle and Dr. Lucy Johnson, and they co-opted a team of people, a range of professionals, but significantly experts by experience, to first of all get together and think about what it was to be a human being and have an emotional world and emotional challenges, and then think about a way of constructing a framework that was allowed people to make sense of it. Their attempt was to create something that could replace the medical model of distress. So the Power Threat Meaning Framework, in order to do that and have legitimacy, is tremendously well researched and has a very strong underpinning in evidence, and like I say, including experts by experience. As you saw from the animation, we use work from the Polyvagal Institute and linking to our biology and what it is to be a human being and what neuroscience, the latest neuroscience is telling us about what it is to be a human and understanding our emotions. We use work from Harvard University. The Harvard Good Life Study is the longest running study in the world on health and well-being. It's been running for 87 years now. And most significantly, what they're finding is, their key finding is that relationships in our life, strong, good relationships, the quality of them, not quantity of them, is the biggest factor in determining future health and happiness. It's having good relationships in your life age 50 is a better indication of future health and happiness than things like cholesterol and blood pressure. So human beings need safety and connection with others in order to switch off and to operate at our optimum state. It's relationships, safety and connection, which are the key to that. And that's what Harvard University are telling us. We use work from acceptance and commitment therapy, which is one of the most researched and uses brain research in terms of to test out their therapy. And it's really useful for some quick and simple techniques that allow people to lift their torch and to find some perspective. So that's a really significant part of our training. We use some transactional analysis that help people to understand relationships, how they are in relationships, but also our relationships with ourselves, how we interact with ourselves, and that some of the dynamics that go with that. Again, another useful tool to put in your bag for life. We use work from Dr. Brené Brown. She's very well known for her TED Talks, is a doctor of social work. Professor Richard Bentel, Gabor Mate, Bessel van der Kolk, Joanna Moncrief, Jackie Dillon. So Dr. Jackie Dillon was part of the team, was an expert by experience who worked with the team that designed the Power Threat Meaning Framework. And Jackie has been a collaborator with us in designing our emotional first aid training. It was very important to us that we had that expert by experience perspective, and she's been vital to the training that we've created. So that's all for me. Thanks ever so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it's made you curious about finding out more, and we'd be very happy to talk at a later date a little bit more about the training. So I'll hand you back to Harry, but thanks ever so much for joining us this morning. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Matthew. Brilliant stuff. So now we've heard a great deal about what the emotional first aid is and the content, some of the content and some of the key concepts of the training. I wanted to talk a bit now about kind of how we put it together, how we develop the training. So first things first, really, with one of the key things for us for the development were the pilots. So we did a pilot sort of done both externally and internally over an 18-month period. So nearly 2 years worth of, so a year and a half to nearly 2 years actually of pilot and development. We had external pilots conducted with both a national charity and an NHS trust in London. And that led to the development of the first aid for yourself ethos. So as Matthew said right at the start of the presentation, one of the key things for emotional first aid is that the first aid is for yourself. This isn't something that then you have to worry about or feel responsibility for practicing or for caring for others. This is something about how to key concepts and understanding and philosophies of how to look after yourself. And that came on quite early on in the development as we were looking at, or how do we put this training together? How do we take all this research that we have and all this knowledge that we have, and how do we put this together in something that's going to be really memorable and really kind of makes an impact for people? And we were looking at it, first of all, from the kind of more traditional first aid view of you have a first aider and they look out for and look after other people. And as we were trying to apply the research to this model, we could never really seem to get it working. It just didn't really seem to, the pieces didn't fit together for us. Whereas as soon as we came up with the idea, as Matthew's saying, of this first aid is for yourself ethos, everything just immediately clicked, just like a building brick, just clicked in place. And it's just been, and ever since then, we've found such success with this model. So it's thanks to the pilots, and it's thanks to being able to do the pilots on a regular basis with lots of different people that has led to this, led to that development. And as Matthew was saying in the last slide, it's been developed with both experts and experts with experience, with Dr. Jack Dillon as providing input on the external pilots and the course development. So this isn't something that we have put together just by ourselves. This has come from the collaboration with lots of different people who are both experts in their field and also crucially experts by the experiences that they have gone through in their lives. So I want to talk about the feedback now. So far we've had 100% positive responses for those people who have given feedback following the 2 days of the 2-day pilots and the 5-day train the trainer pilots. And there's a lot, I could be here for a long time with all quotes that we've got, but I just wanted to give you a few key ones that I think really just summarize kind of what we're trying to achieve with emotional first aid. So the first one is, I would describe it as a way to look after yourself, to make you as strong as possible, to then be able to help and support other people. The next one I think is my favorite one: what you need to know. Simple as that. It is just what you need to know. I found the concept of EFA much more natural than the concept of mental health first aid training, and much easier to see how learning from it could be implemented, as the concept allows you to tailor the delivery to your specific organizational needs. So that one's quite a key one, because we spoke to this person who gave that feedback isn't alone in that we spoke to many people who, when they came onto the training, were saying how really as soon as we talked about the first aid is for yourself ethos, as opposed to practicing or having responsibility for lots of others, they were able to immediately relax and enjoy the training so much more, because then it just felt all that responsibility, this worry of responsibility was just taken off their shoulders. As soon as they realized that this was something that, oh, actually this is just something for me and for me to do for myself, it took away a lot of the pressure, and it meant that people were able to engage with it in a much more meaningful and enjoyable way. Learning about self-care and how to use skills and techniques to look after yourself, which can then enable you to help others too. And finally, an opportunity and permission to practice self-care as a way to help myself first and others. So really, we can see a key theme here with the feedback is that people really, having done this training, felt in a much stronger position to be able to look after themselves, but most importantly, knowing why they need to look after themselves in order to then help the people around them. So that's just some key takeaways of the feedback we've received so far. So what is available? So you've seen the concepts, you've seen the ideas, you've seen sort of what we're trying to get across with the training. So what training is available to you at the moment this year? So first things first, we have the 2-day emotional first aid training. So this is aimed at, as Matthew was saying, this is aimed at managers, supervisors, HR workers, anyone who has a position of responsibility in their organization for the physical and emotional well-being of staff and of their workforce. The 2-day is for them, because that not only explains the how, but it also crucially explains the why. And we've done that the 2-day because we know it's not realistic to maybe to have every single member of staff go through 2 days worth of training. That's going to be too much for most workforces, if not completely impossible for many workforces, to have 2 days of consecutive training for their entire workforce. So that's why it's been aimed at managers and supervisors and HR workers. So we have our 1-day emotional first aid training, and this is aimed at all staff. So as Matthew spoke about, and as we saw in the animation regarding the importance of this kind of overall emotional co-regulation, this training has been designed that the more people have some awareness of it, the more people that have understanding of the training, of the kind of concepts of the training, the more successful it is probably going to be at a wider level, and the more successful it's going to be at shaping and changing a culture of a workforce. So this is why we've done a 1-day training. So that means as many people as possible in an organization could feasibly do it and take part in it. We also have an introduction to emotional first aid e-learning. So this is designed to be part of an organization's introductory mandatory training. So this helps you as an organization say to your new employee from day one, this is the philosophy that we take here. This is what we believe in. This is an ethos that is important to us as a workforce and as a company, organization, charity, whatever you might be, that it is important for you to look after yourself, because if you're not looking after yourself, then you're not able to help and support the people around you. So this e-learning helps you set that stage. It helps you get across that message to your new members of staff from day one. And finally, for larger organizations, we've got the 5-day train the trainer. So designed for larger organizations to have their own in-house trainers. So we know it's not going to be economical or really very kind of efficient for a large organization to have us to come in to train their staff, whether that's a 2-day or the 1-day. So we've designed the trainer so that larger organizations can send their trainers to us. Then we will train them over the 5 days to be able to deliver the 2-day and the 1-day in their own individual organizations. So following that 5-day, they will have a license where they will be licensed specifically to carry out and provide those training to their organizations. That will last for a year, and then there will be a yearly update that they need to take part in. That is around a day or worth of content, just in case there have been any updates to the training since they last did it. So that is what is available right here, right now, this year. Moving forward, though, that's not all we plan to do. So we have other content on the horizon and other things that we want to be able to provide to people. So the first thing is that we want to provide emotional first aid to children and younger adults. So childhood and adolescence can be, as sure many people may have experienced, can be an incredibly turbulent time for our emotions. So much change in such a short amount of time. So we want to be able to provide something to younger people to really help with those transitions, those key transitions, and just to really spread the message that things are going to happen to you, things are going to happen in your life, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there's anything wrong with you. And it's all about just helping to understand why some of those things might be happening and equipping them with ways to stay resilient to them. As we can see at the moment, that ever since post-COVID, especially, things like absence rates in education and also behavior in the classroom is becoming more and more difficult for younger people. So we want to do everything we can to help not just people working with children, but something directly for children themselves. So we've got we also want to do emotional first aid for educators and people working with children. So at the moment, everything for emotional first aid is designed for adult to adult, whereas we realize that adults working with children are going to need something a bit more bespoke to that. So we need to have something that's more specific for working with children, more centered and more backed by research into childhood development. So that is something that we want to do research into and something we want to be able to provide. But then going to the other end of that, we want to provide emotional first aid for older age. As many of you might know, we are an aging population. We are an aging society, as many other kind of Western countries are. Our population is getting older and older and older. That is going to have a direct impact on many things as time goes on. It's going to have a massive impact on our healthcare system. It's going to have a massive impact on our social healthcare system. And so we need something to help not just the people working with older adults, but we need something to help older adults themselves. Because as we get older, obviously there are massive changes as we get older with different healthcare conditions, and also, something that we don't always talk about very openly in our society, but our mortality. And that obviously is something that as we get older becomes more and more of a pressing issue and a pressing concern on people's minds. So we need to have training on emotional first aid that is more reflective and more specific to older people. So that is what we hope to provide in the future. So what next? So having heard all of that, having heard all the information about what emotional first aid is and what is available, what can you do from there? Well, we're really keen to talk to people to see how we can help them and the people that they work with. So if anything that you've heard today that you think would be useful to you or your organization and you want to hear more, we're really keen to talk to you or anyone really about how we can potentially help them, how emotional first aid could help them. So we'd really encourage people to get in touch with us. And the way that we try and work is that we try and have a conversation with you. We would try and have a conversation with you about your organization, the challenges that you might be facing as an organization. And then based on that and based on what's happening for your organization, we will recommend whatever training we feel would best suit your organization and best help you depending on what challenges you face and also the size of your organization. So please get in touch with us so we can discuss your needs and arrange some training. We like to go to organizations and train you directly. We can go anywhere in the country. So we've got trainers in lots of different places all over the country, so we can be national in terms of our reach. We do also have some training dates going on at our own headquarters. So those will be posted on soon on our website. Those will also be posted on LinkedIn. And yeah, so please link with us via LinkedIn and Facebook, or just keep in touch with us via our email as we grow and develop our services. So it might be that if this isn't quite something that might be for your organization right now, based on your size and scope, but you feel might be useful in the future, yeah, drop us a link or follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook, so then you can be kept up to date as we develop. So I want to say, just from myself and Matthew, thank you so much for listening and taking the time out to hear us out, to hear all about emotional first aid this morning. I hope you found it really interesting and enjoyable. My email is on the screen there, so harry.batley@emotionalfirstaid.co.uk. I'll leave it on the screen there for a minute, just so for people can write that down. If you want to get more information and also more contact details, you can head to www.emotionalfirstaid.co.uk. And again, a lot more information regarding the courses we have available, and also a little bit about us as an organization. And also, you can find our contact details on there. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. And so we've got if people have got any questions, any queries, anything about the any burning questions that they want to ask now, we've got about 5 minutes. I know we've run over a little bit. We've got about 5 minutes if people wanted to ask anything. But if you do need to shoot, completely understandable.
Thank you, Liz.
Run over.
Apologies for running over. I think that was me. I think I got a bit carried away with sharing information. Hopefully you could tell I'm quite passionate about what we've created, and so sometimes hard to keep keeping the time, but yeah, thanks for sticking with us, sticking with us to the end.